ready to begin. This meeting is called to order. And the first item of business is the minutes. Have you looked at it, Jim? I already signed them, so we're good on that. We don't have any candidates here.
And I only heard from one candidate. I did contact all the candidates to let them know, because I know that's not something you're probably gonna be looking for in the paper or
Right.
whatever. But I did contact the candidates. I only heard back from one candidate, and she was just asking if she had to.
Oh.
So, yeah.
You,
No.
you want permission to be absent?
Yeah.
Which is kind of disturbing if you think about it, because then are they gonna be there for the meetings? If they get elected? Anyway, okay, well, let's just go forward with, I suppose you've got it here.
Yep.
Okay. We'll start out with Greenland Zone 4. We have two candidates, Caden Dennis and Audrey Fillmore. Take a draw.
Number two. that
That's
would be
Caden
Caden Dennis.
Dennis. And number 1. For Audrey Fillmore.
This would be for Director Whitney Woods Bryant. Number 2.
Number 1 is Ricky. Next one is Donald Tippett and Director Ismar Eddie Ramos. Is that, there's 2.
C. True. Number 2.
Ramos. Director Ismar Ramos. I didn't read the rules, but since somebody's here. Didn't matter. Yeah, yeah, and that pretty much is it then.
And I've got 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. Is that what everyone
That's what-
else
yeah.
has?
We're
That's what I-
consistent with something.
We are, yes.
So when we talk about school, it should go to certification.
Yes, and when I, emailed Max, I told Max we would not make a decision today, if that's okay. We don't have to make one today. We can do it when we do the ballot approval on the
Oh, okay.
13th. But I do feel like we should have a discussion, about the polling location.
Okay.
So I can give you information on that. So the Farmington School District is having a millage increase. They do not have a contested race for their school board race, but with the millage increase, they will have to have voting on election day. So that would be at the Main Street Baptist Church.
Okay. Just one location.
Just one location in Farmington. Then, Greenland has a contested race in Zone 4. They also have a millage increase. So we would open up Greenland Community Center. That's the normal polling location for Greenland. Prairie Grove has a contested race in position 1. They also have a millage increase. And then, they now vote at large which, doesn't change our polling location, but it just means that the entire school district would vote. Of course, with a millage increase, they would do that as well. So that would be the Prairie Grove Christian Church. And then when we get to Springdale, so Springdale had both an at-large position and a zone 5 position. But their at-large position is uncontested. The
Okay.
only race they have is in zone 5. They do not have a millage increase. So we would only need to look at polling locations in zone 5 instead of looking at the entire school district. So that narrows down the locations that are in zone 5. Benton County, which this is, I don't know if Kim sees it this way, but this is a blessing in some ways. Benton County has a special election in, you've got the map you're looking at, see that Pleasure Heights Fire District is kind of down
All the
here
way
at
up
the bottom.
there, yeah.
They're having a rural fire department election. This portion of this Pleasure Heights Fire District is actually in the Springdale School District, which means that she will conduct the school election for Springdale in the Benton County part of it. Normally in an odd year, we would be the domicile county and we would be responsible for opening up a polling location, getting the list of voters from them. It becomes quite complicated.
Yeah.
But because she does have this special election and these voters are in the Springdale School District, she will conduct her portion of the Springdale school election in Benton County. So for us now, we only have to worry about our side of it. It's also good for voters for consistency because during a school election, during early vote, Benton County voters would have had to come into Washington County to early vote. And then on election day, there would have been a site open at, in Bethel Heights, or what was the old Bethel Heights. But, so now Benton County voters can vote early in Benton County and on election day in Benton County, run completely by their election commission. So we will only be responsible for our zone 5. And then the locations that are located in zone 5, the American Legion, Nob Hill Fire Station, Sonora Baptist Church, and Springdale Civic Center. I don't know that we would necessarily want to open all 4 of those in 2023. American Legion had 74 voters. Now, voter turnout for a school election is notoriously low. Nob Hill had 34. Sonora had 54, and Springdale Civic Center had 104. So we do need to, I believe, open at least 2 polling locations.
Oh, really?
I mean, because of the way, if you look, I've got a zone 5 map there for you. If you look at how big zone 5 is and how it's out.
We don't have the locations of these full.
I don't have them marked on there, but when we meet on Thursday, I'll have them marked for you. But basically, War Eagle, that area and where the Nob Hill is, Sonora. I feel like Nob Hill and Sonora are fairly close to one another. And then there's a large number of voters that would live closer to the Springdale Civic Center. But we can open all 4. We could open.
I think that would be overkill.
So 2, so, that would be for the commission. I mean, we'll need to, want to decide.
I'd like to see where these are located.
Okay,
The numbers of voters is certainly a factor in decision making, but I think distance would be another thing.
and I will get distance and, maps for the locations for our next meeting. So yeah, so you can look at that. And also to note too, these numbers, Springdale had a special election the city of Springdale had a special election in 2023, which means that even with the special election and the school election, your numbers were really small. I mean, that just shows kind of like what your voter turnout is.
Right. Well, we can contemplate this, and if you give us the actual locations, that should help.
I will.
So. Okay.
The school zones?
Yeah.
Yes, how they are, yes.
That, okay, early vote.
So early vote, in 2023, we actually opened up early vote outside of just the courthouse for that election. We did the American Legion, Elmdale, and Lincoln. Part of it, we did the American Legion in Elmdale because the city of Springdale was having a special election, so we felt like maybe there might be more interest. We couldn't have, well, it was split. American Legion or Elmdale could only be open 2 days. and so
Yeah.
it was, that's why we had it split. But with the school election, I feel like we should just stick with the county clerk's office. Rather than looking to open up, any other early vote sites.
Any arguments about opening more? Is that just overkill?
You're looking at a 5% voter turnout, most, if that, the highest voter turnout we've ever had for a school election was with the, Fayetteville School District. They had a millage one year, it failed, and they came back to do another millage and made a big push. But even at that, we were looking at a 10% voter turnout. So, but it is a question that, you may want to think about, should we open up any more early vote sites? We did early voting in Prairie Grove, we did early voting in Farmington for the general election. We've done early voting at the Springdale Civic Center. We've done early voting at American Legion, early voting at Sonora, but I just don't know if
There's enough to.
if there's enough to justify doing early voting, at, for a school election. So, yeah, so, and both Lincoln, I feel like we did early voting in Lincoln because they had a special election as well. I think their special election was, trying to get the funds for building, their square. So, I think we opened them for special elections and not because it was school district, having.
Okay, well, we can decide that.
Continue that discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Next.
and you can, I mean, our early vote turnout at Lincoln was 72, that was, and then they had 79 turnout on election day. Our early vote turnout for American Legion was 184, and then we were at Elmdale, and it was 284. But that was, I don't think it was the school election that drove the voters out, it was the Springdale was having a special election.
Yeah.
Early voting in the county clerk's office was 1,126. But the city or Fayetteville School District had an at-large position that was contested, so that drove those numbers.
Okay, is Max for sure gonna be at our next meeting? Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, he apologizes for not being, he knew this was set, he knew, and I would have loved to have been able to change this one, but this is when we have to advertise. If it looks like Max won't be able to be at our meeting on the 13th, we can reschedule that one. I mean, not too far out, but
Yeah.
we do have a little bit more flexibility on when we might schedule that one.
Okay, let's keep that in mind, but, hopefully we won't have to reschedule it. Other business?
Do we need to have should we have a conversation, or would you like to explain what went on with the Senate committee?
For the posting bill, the electioneering
Yeah.
one, okay. Yes, so I believe it's Senate Bill 293, which is the bill that, is being run about postings at the polling locations. And when it was first heard in committee, they went through all the different finer points about the bill, and then they got to the electioneering part. So the electioneering part talked specifically about a sign that was 2 feet by 2 feet that would say no electioneering within 100 feet, and it would need to be posted outside, outside along with our other like vote here signs and different things like that. So when they got to that discussion about that part of the bill, Senator Clark asked about, could it be a two-sided sign? And one sign said no electioneering, and the other side would say this side allows electioneering, or electioneering is prohibited or is allowed outside the 100 feet. Which leads us back into the past 2 sessions where we have seen bills filed that would require all polling locations to allow campaign signs on their property. So,
Let me
Yeah.
interject something. It seems to me, if I recall, like that the language was more specific than that he would put on there. That this site may not.
Yeah.
Is prohibited from not allowing
it was much,
electioneering.
yes, it was much more legalese.
Yeah.
Yes, but it goes back into the idea of requiring polling locations to allow campaign, that they must allow campaign signs. So the kind of the back and forth, he asked for an amendment, to put that in that bill. And, so it was pulled from committee.
Okay.
So discussion was had, about, should sites be required to, allow campaign signs? And one of his complaints, Senator Clark's complaints, is that, some sites will allow campaign signs from a particular party or a particular issue, but then not allow them for the opposite party or the opposite thought process. And we have always had the policy, if you're not gonna allow campaign signs, you can't pick and choose. It's either all or none.
Yeah, so.
And you can't do that. So the bill got pulled, to be amended, but the amendment that they did was they pulled all of the wording that they had added in that bill for electioneering and campaign signs. So that no longer is part of the posting bill. All of the electioneering language was pulled.
All of them, even the 100 feet.
The language that was in that bill that they're trying to pull, that part of electioneering is in another part of the code. And so that remains, you can't electioneer within inside the 100 feet. So that part's not gonna change, but the part about the specific sign and all of that having to be posted, that part was pulled from the bill. So it's no longer part of the posting bill. So when they were having their discussion, so at the next meeting, when the bill was back on committee the next time, they filed the amendment. Of course, is one of those things when they file the amendments in committee, you can't see them, like we can't see them beforehand. So if amendments are filed before they get to committee, we can always look at the amendments beforehand. But we were able to look at it afterwards, and that's when you can see that it pulled all the language. But the discussion again came back to polling locations must allow campaign signs. And they basically was, if we're going to do that, that's gonna have to be a separate bill, that's right. So far, that bill has not been filed. No one,
Who's, the person that's pushing this?
Clark.
It is Clark.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is Clark. So now,
So something happened in
Yes.
his,
4 years.
okay,
Yes.
4 years ago.
yes, so it is something that's, and you can tell when he speaks about it, it is something very personal.
Yeah.
That he he has had an issue with, that he has called and made complaints about. So it is something very personal that did happen to him. For 2 sessions, we have been successfully able to fight that bill being implemented, because it would knock out a large majority
lose some of our
we would.
poets.
We would lose Covenant, we would lose Mount Comfort,
Yeah.
Fayetteville Library, Springdale Library. Those sites don't allow it. Oak Grove, our only site we have in Johnson, and it's almost impossible for us to have a site in Johnson. There's just not any
No places.
in Johnson. So there definitely would be a lot of challenges that we would have if we were to have to require all sites to have polling location or campaign signs.
Yeah.
We're not the only county that this would impact. It would impact Benton County. In the past, Crawford, Sebastian, Pulaski, Faulkner, Garland, all of those counties have spoken out against it as well. So I just think that, it would do a lot of,
So, I mean, basically what you're saying is that almost every county in the state would be impacted in a negative way. Maybe as much as we'd all lose half of our polling sites,
you would lose a large majority of
maybe
them.
even more than that.
You could, but then some polling places are irreplaceable in the
Yeah.
sense, so for instance, if we were to lose Mount Comfort Church, on Mount Comfort, there's not another location in that area for us to replace it with. So yes, there's a couple of churches on that road, but they don't have the parking, they don't have the space, and that area just continues to grow.
Right.
The same thing with Oak Grove, the same thing in Johnson. It is really difficult for us to find a polling location in Johnson just because there's not a lot of churches in Johnson, and their city hall is very small. So
To say the least.
so it's not sometimes the number of sites that
Yeah.
you might lose, sometimes it's the impact of that one particular site that you might lose. So definitely, I think it's something that we will continue to watch to see. If something is filed so far, nothing's been filed, and we are getting on the shorter end of
Sure.
things,
sure,
but
yeah.
what will happen is towards the end of session, they will start to file shell bills.
Yeah.
And the shell bills will just simply be a bill that says, I'm addressing electioneering. And then it won't have anything else in it, but they get it filed. And then they gives them the opportunity to come back and amend and add language. So definitely, it will be something that we will need to be monitoring.
Vigilant.
So tell me, what is the definition of a shell bill?
So basically, there's a deadline when you can file bills. And so sometimes you want to fix a problem. So let's say if I was wanting to fix the electioneering problem, but it didn't have all the language written and I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it, I would just file a bill that says
This isn't.
electioneering. And then I can come back and amend it.
Do you know what that date is?
I'm thinking
I'll have
it's
to look.
mid-April, but
I
I'm
think
not
so
sure.
too. I'll look. I'll
Tom,
send
do you
that
know?
out. But normally it is in April, so yeah. So I'll continue to monitor it. We can preemptively do a resolution if the commission wanted to, saying that we would not be in support if such a bill was filed. I don't know if the commission wanted to go that route, but I will keep an eye out on it.
I don't want to do that. I tell you what, this is related to that discussion. You and I have had some of this discussion. I have a great concern about where the limits of the SBBC, where they start and where they stop.
Okay.
As far as dealing with election related bills. Try to read and understand the law. And I can only find one line in the law that says anything about what they're authorized to do.
Right.
Regarding election related bills. And that's
I'm
what
not
it
even
says.
sure they
It
know.
says monitor.
Yeah.
All it says is monitor election related
Mm.
legislation. That's what it says.
And yeah,
Do
my,
they have the right under law to do the things they're doing as far as pushing, bills?
I don't think they know.
I love for them to be on our side, pushing
Yeah,
bills as far as they do,
right.
if they're on our side.
That's a good point. My understanding, and this has been a frustration for me too, is that their job is to promulgate rules after the legislation has been passed. But, and that was even, is it Tim Humphries? That was one thing that he talked about was, this is what we do. We're not to be proactive. We're to be reactive,
Well, who
basically.
is Tim?
He used to be the attorney
Okay.
that, he was not chairman.
Well, they tend to hire attorneys as chairman. So, like,
Well, he was a legal advisor or
He
something.
was, and he's one of those people who had so much institutional knowledge,
Right.
had been involved. He was like the source you could go to,
Right.
when he was there, definitely.
And I don't know where he went, but, he's not there now. And, but that was one of the things that frustrated me, was that his point of view that you're only after the fact, you can't do anything to get it going before the fact, or to defeat bad legislation, or even to advise legislators, hey, this might need to be handled another way.
So their active, participation in, helping write bills, that are election related, maybe outside of their purview.
Well, see, a big part of that is what Chris Madison and some of the other fellows
How they
perceive as their job now.
So
interpretation.
the bills that they do present, so the SBEC has a board.
Yeah.
And before legislation started, there were bills that were presented and the board approves
Okay.
anything. So basically, they had a list of bills that the SBEC board approved, that they would be behind
They
it and
support.
exactly. Anything additional to that would be coming out, I would think that the SBEC board would have to come on board.
Sure.
And it just, just like if our commission were to, this, like you had us write a resolution in favor of or against something, that would have to come from the board. So I would think that any other new legislation that would be coming up, because the electioneering would be a new one, would have to be approved by the board.
Well, the board, as I understand it, according to law, it's 7 people.
Yes.
And the 7 people will include, as chairman, the secretary of state, who may or may not sit in as chairman, may designate somebody else. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yes.
2 people that are appointed by the heads of the parties. 2 people that are appointed by the leadership of both houses, the House and the Senate. 2 people that are appointed by the governor, but those 2 people, there's a caveat with those. One of them has to be a serving, state or county clerk, right? And the other one has to have served at least 3 years in this position. But they're all appointed, they're not elected. And then they're allowed under law to hire a director, and a staff. So that's who they are. Now, the next question is, what is their purview according to the law? And as I read that, very little to do with, and I'm sorry that it took me 4 years to go back and read all this stuff. But, it got that important to,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't think they have the right to be doing the things they're doing. I would love to hear an attorney who is not
Oh,
affiliated with
Yeah.
either side of this question, give a response. Are they outside of their purview? They're acting within their legal rights. But, you know, I'm not challenging them.
yeah,
At the same time, I think it's valuable, it'd be valuable for the people of Washington County and the people of the state to clear that up. What are they allowed to do? And
they've actually been more involved than they used to be, correct?
Yes, but I do think that that was in response to, we would get legislation passed that to implement that legislation was almost impossible. So it was a reaction to bills and legislation that was passed, and then you're like, okay, well, in a practical world, how do we do that? So I think that especially like cleanup bills. So for instance, they would find things where one legislative session did this, and then, well, they completely forgot this
Messed
part
up.
where it was written. Like, so there's a writing candidate bill that's making its way through. So in 2023, writing candidates were removed, no longer allowed, but then they found in other portions of the law where it says, oh, and writing candidates. So those definitely, they have been much more proactive in finding like those cleanup kind of things. And that's been part of the legislation that has come from their office. And that's, so definitely there's a look at what is needed, and they would be the source to find those kind of things. And
But again, that's reactive. It's not proactive.
but they're trying to be proactive in like, hey, from previous session, you guys forgot this part of the
Yeah.
bill and it needs to be corrected. So it's pointing out those kind of things. And that's the part about election law, just in general. When you look at the law book, it is not linear. Like, here's
Right.
how to do an election from start to finish, and here's all the laws that go with it, and they're in order. Well, there's the start part here, and then there's another start part here, and then there's an ending part before the start part. And so trying to manage that, I think, is where you see a lot of election laws that you have to do cleanup bills.
Right.
You have to be like, oh yeah, I forgot. So another one that's making its way right now through, and I don't know if this one is an SBEC one or not, but 2 years ago, when they limited elections to 2 times a year, well, they specified special elections, but they didn't specify vacancy elections. So technically, if you had a vacancy election that needed to be held, you could have held it in the 4 previous dates that had been set. So now they're running a cleanup bill to say, okay, vacancies are also part of that too. So some of it
I think
is,
that's fair and reasonable. I don't have a problem with that, and that's where this gets really questioned. If the SBC were listening to the CBC across the state and saying, we're willing to support that. The monitoring phase, you know, just let's support that. But when they take a bill that's any bill that is harmful in our functions across the state, and send their director to help run the bill against our best situation, I think that is a problem. Just think it's a real problem. And I know when we went 4 years ago, you and I and I don't know who else went down there. You went down there and
yeah,
Tim, and we appeared before the Senate Governmental Affairs State Agencies Committee. And, Bob Ballinger was on that committee, and I spoke with Bob. And I said, Bob, this is harmful. These things are harmful to the CBDCs. I said, why didn't you check with us? Why don't we get some opportunity to give some input on this? He said, we checked with everybody that was supposed to check with. I said, who'd you check it? Well, we checked with the committee that involves clerks, county clerks,
Yeah.
and the SBEC.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Well, there's a problem there. That they believe when they're dealing with the SBDC, that they're speaking for the whole of the state and CDCs across the state. And they're not. And I just think that it's something that I'm 77, if they kick me off, that's fine. I think we ought to, stand up and say, this is not the right way to do this.
Yeah.
This is centralized government at its finest.
That's a good point.
Appointed people making decisions over and above elected.
I think too, and we have said this many years, is part of the Association of Counties has the clerk's position in it. And granted, the Association of Counties, they're all for elected officials. There should be added to the Association of Counties a part for election commission. Even though you may not be elected on a ballot, you are elected by your parties to serve.
You say expand the Associated Counties
If
to
you-
include,
And to include the SBEC as their own group and not just the county clerks, because a lot of times if we see something legislation, we'll check with the County Clerks Association, how, are you supporting this or are you against this? And sometimes our duties don't match the clerk's duties. I mean, they're, the way they're written in the law, so they may not have a position, or they may not, be
Or they
concerned
just
about
haven't
it.
thought about it from that
Right.
point of view.
So if we had an association, then we could advocate just like the County Clerks Association.
If it was operating correctly. I'm thinking about our other organization that was simply not effective in the ways that it needed to be.
Mhm. And that's one of the nice things about if you were part of the Association of Counties, and every county is required to have a CBEC. I mean, by statute, you're required to have
so
it.
let me clarify what you're suggesting here. Are you suggesting that there be, how many people are on the Association of Counties?
Well, so it's broken up in divisions. So like the county clerks have their own group. The judges have their own group, JPs have their own group. Everybody has their own group within
That participate in this association?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're saying the CBDC should have a group that's part of that? So the CBDC.
A subgroup.
And the county pays money for, to be a member of the association. And that, so the County Clerks Association, they have an attorney. So there's like all these different things that the association.
That's not a bad idea, but SBDC seems to stand alone, in maybe parallel with the association. If the SBDC was really truly representing the CBDCs, then, that's a higher level of power than, a few people in the county. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if is the biggest two-letter word in the English language. Frogs were, yeah.
So, but that's just a thought. I mean, and that would kind of, because right now, what we get in regards to what laws are being filed and what's going to be on the committee, we get something from the Secretary of State's office, but it's just a simple spreadsheet that just says, this has been filed, this is when it's, when it's in the meeting with no description, no that.
No pluses or minuses.
Exactly.
This could affect such and such.
So with the County Clerks Association, they get the same thing. They have a list of bills that they are monitoring and they're filing. And then they put it out to the members, similar to what I do for our
Right,
little Northwest Arkansas group. To say, hey, these are the highlights of this bill. This might impact us this way. What do you think? You have an issue with that? That would be, you know, done on a state level versus just like our little group trying to
And
do
that,
it here.
and that may, you know, that may be, very effective and help, trying to think of what, if there's interim steps that, I've thought seriously about writing self as a county election commissioner, writing a letter to the, Secretary of State, asking, you know, what are the legal, I guess, limits on the SBEC. I don't know if that, you know, I've always learned a long time ago that if you've got a problem with an individual, if you're an advancement or something, you need to take that individual aside and try to deal with it. But if you got a problem with the whole group, you need to go to the hill because it's coming from the hill. The whole group is going in the wrong direction. And I think right now that SBEC head is the Secretary of State, correct?
That's who the chair is, yeah.
So, I'm not suggesting something, Madam Chair, but I am saying that, believe that, maybe the time is now, say, to have that conversation.
Yeah,
I just lay that on the.
well, let's think about that, because there's some other questions that probably need clarification. And let's think about it. They're not going to probably do anything while the legislature is in session.
Will change.
In terms of explaining what goes where and how the pieces fit together, because right now our map is not clear in that regard. If you're saying you've got directors that are advocating for bills, that seems a little.
Well, I think the bills that are being presented from the SBEC board have been approved at a meeting. So it would be the
Oh,
same,
yeah.
it would be the same as, hey, I bring something to our commission to say, hey, this is a problem. Let's see if we can find a sponsor and write a bill. And then I would go and speak with whoever is presenting it, because whoever is presenting it is not going to be the expert on it. So all the bills that have been presented have been approved by the SBEC board as part of their packet. That's why I was saying with the electioneering side of it, that part would have to be approved by the board if something were to come in regards to a bill.
Well, I don't know how the SBDC is utilizing Chris during this period of time, but 2 years ago, what was the man's name? I can never remember.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Daniel was in that position. And when I had a long telephone conversation, with him, during that conversation, he admitted to me that it was his job. He had been assigned by the SBDC to go with the person that was
Shepherd that bill.
shepherd the bill,
Yeah.
and make statements to the leaders of committees and stuff that, in support of it.
Right.
Try to get it passed.
Yeah.
He was given the job to get that bill passed.
Did it pass?
No,
Oh.
but well, no, it was this electioneering bill.
Oh,
And it made it out of the state agencies committee,
Yeah.
governmental affairs state agency committee, Senate side, but it wasn't actually voted on during one of their meetings. They went around and got 5 votes and to get it to the Senate floor. Then they voted to go on the Senate floor. And it wasn't the same.
Wow. Oh, it wasn't?
So
Well, let's,
here's the thing, this time they tried to slip it in.
Oh.
With that, Clark asked.
Well, I think Clark definitely, you could tell when Clark made that suggestion that they're like, oh, wait, I felt like they were ambushed,
Yeah.
you know,
But, I mean, but.
with that.
Yeah. I just think that, I think that they are going beyond their purview.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's not our job. I would say respectfully to tell them what their job is.
Right.
However, it would be good if we had some understanding what the limits are for them. And a lot of that could have to do with who is leading the SBEC at a particular time.
Well, the leader is the is,
Well, I mean, in terms of, not, let's not count the Secretary of State, but the actual, the people who are working every day, and that would be, it was Daniel, now it's Chris, and their vision of that office may be different. I don't know. But I think it's worth pursuing, and we should. We need to understand what,
maybe the starting place is to ask Chris.
yeah.
That's
We could do that. Well, let's put this one on hold for now and
all.
do some more cogitating on it. And then maybe the thing we need to do, we need to get Chris to come and do a private presentation with us or something.
No, I don't think you could do that. That would not be a public meeting.
Well, that's true. It wouldn't be, but at least, I mean, we need some input from him. But anyway, let's think about that, and unless you've got other business.
I have 2 things.
Okay, two.
Okay, so one, speaking of legislation, so Benton County has got a bill that they're running through John Carr for the ballot draw standardization act, which is exactly what we did today. Kim is going with Carr on, I think it's the 12th, to present at committee, and she asked if I would come, if there's questions or if I could present, because we have been doing it this way for many years. And she just asked if I would go, but I didn't want to go without any permission from the commission, because I don't want to speak for Washington County Commission unless I specifically have been given permission to speak for Washington County Election Commission. It's on the 12th, it's next week.
What's the purpose of the?
So the bill would, right now currently with the ballot draw, it just simply says, by law.
Your purpose of going there is to talk about the ballot.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Is John Carr going to do this?
yes, he is. If you would want to go, Kim, and ask if you might want to go. She has one commissioner going as well. So basically, the ballot draw, when you read the bill and you just sit there and read it, it can seem a little confusing. But when we've been doing it as often as we've been doing it, it's pretty straightforward.
Right.
But when you're presenting it to a committee that's never done a ballot draw, you're kind of like, you know, they don't know the nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
it, basically. And so Kim had asked if, you know, for support for the bill, if we might be willing to go as well.
Well, I haven't read the bill. However, I would say, I would bet you could make it seem more clear.
Mhm.
You might be able to add some language that would help it to seem clear to the other candidates.
Well, I think it basically, this little notes I have on
Yeah,
on our thing
okay,
have become kind of part of the bill.
okay,
So I think it's just talking about it in a practical sense.
okay.
This would be how you would conduct your ballot from.
Okay.
So,
So, the meeting on the 12th, is it their election commission meeting? or-
no, it's the
Yes.
committee, it's state agencies, their state agencies meeting.
They have stated
This is,
that Benton County has a state agency.
No, this is in Little
oh,
Rock.
we have to go to Little Rock.
Okay.
So basically, yes, so basically this bill will be on the committee, for state agencies on the 12th. And, Carr is the sponsor and he will be presenting, but he has asked Kim to actually present the bill. And Kim had asked if I would come along, because she even asked if you might want to come along too, because she does have a commissioner going as well.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Would you like to go?
I may do that.
Okay, I think, I don't know if we need a motion here, but, we give you permission to go.
I have a, appointment that day, first year. I checks if I need it, but I can probably change that. I'll look into that and see.
and I will double check and make sure, because we found that just because it's on the agenda doesn't mean it's gonna get
Yeah.
heard. So I will double check with Kim today and make sure that he is for sure going to run it. And not, defer
Yeah.
and wait. So before you changing appointments, let me double check with Kim.
Yeah, please.
The other thing is I printed out an email. I don't know if you guys got this from Kayla or not. And it is, for a presentation by the Commissioner of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. I didn't know if the commission had any interest in going to this. Kim once again asked if I would ride down
Mhm.
with her, to go to this. I thought it might actually be kind of interesting, just to see from a national standpoint, what it is that they're going to be, discussing, for elections, and strengthening elections. And then I think, so it's 11:30 to 1 on the 17th.
Okay.
Did you guys get
Yeah, we
this?
did.
Okay, I didn't know if you did or
I
not,
think
but
it's,
I may go
Well,
with
yeah.
Kim.
It's St. Patrick's Day.
oh, yeah, it
Be
is.
sure to wear your group.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I cannot go to it. So, but
I can,
if you'd like to go for it.
I may do that.
And I don't know, if Max will be back at the.
Who is the, need to understand this, U.S. Election Assistance Committee? Tell me about that. What do you know about that committee?
So they are in some ways the federal version of your state board of election commissioners. And so whenever we have voting equipment that has to be certified, it goes through there to be certified. So that's what they function as, each state has their own set of election laws. And so I feel like they kind of monitor that. In certain cases, the federal government has to step in if there have been violations of election laws, for civil rights. So for instance, I believe there were some counties in Texas, like several years back, where they had so many violations that the federal government came in and said, we're gonna run elections, basically. Kind of thing. And so, but because this is with the Association of Arkansas Counties and the State Board of Elections and the Secretary of State's office, it would be a good chance to visit
Yeah.
with anyone that you might want to visit
Right.
with. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, I'm tentatively down for both the 12th and the 17th.
Okay.
Anything else?
No. Anything else?
Nope, that was it. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned those.
Yes. Well, and will you check with Max and see if he wants to go to this, if he's in?
I will
Available?
I will check with Matt.
Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned.